In 2020, handwritten letters discovered during research in Orson Welles' personal archives revealed one of cinema and music history's greatest secrets. These letters documented a passionate but hidden love affair between Hollywood's most powerful director, Orson Welles, and America's most controversial jazz legend, Billie Holiday. During the 1940s, this forbidden relationship between the creator of Citizen Kane and the voice behind Strange Fruit had developed despite defying all social taboos of the era. Most shocking of all was what the letters revealed: Wells's plans to use Strange Fruit in his films and his confession that Billie Holiday was the true inspiration behind Citizen Kane. Hidden for 80 years, these letters exposed how the love between two artistic giants had affected both of their careers. Hollywood and the jazz world were stunned by this discovery because no one knew these two legends had been so intimately connected. If you want to learn the complete story of this 80-year secret love affair and the shocking details revealed in these letters, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because this discovery requires rewriting both cinema and music history. In March 2020, as researchers stayed home during the pandemic, they accelerated their project to digitize Orson Welles' personal belongings. Doctoral student Sarah Martinez, working at the Welles Collection at the University of Michigan, made an unexpected discovery while scanning through the director's private correspondence files. In a secret compartment of an old leather briefcase, she found 47 handwritten letters. At first glance, it wasn't clear why these letters had been specially hidden, but as Martinez began reading them, she realized she was holding one of cinema history's greatest secrets. The letters were love letters that Orson Welles had written to Billie Holiday between 1941 and 1947. The first letter Martinez read was dated 1942 and began with these words: "Dearest Billie, listening to your voice last night, it was as if my soul was discovering real music for the first time. You don't just sing, you touch the deepest places in people's hearts. I don't know how to express the inspiration I drew from you while creating Citizen Kane." This first letter both amazed and worried Martinez. If these letters were authentic, cinema and music history would have to be completely rewritten. Martinez immediately decided to seek expert help to verify the letters' authenticity. Sarah Martinez consulted with handwriting expert Dr. Robert Chen at the University of Michigan to verify the letters' authenticity. Dr. Chen had been analyzing historical documents for 25 years and knew Orson Welles' handwriting very well. Chen used special microscopes and chemical tests to examine the letters. Initial analyses confirmed that the letters were from the 1940s. The paper quality, ink composition, and writing style all pointed to that period. Most importantly, the handwriting bore all of Welles' characteristic features. Chen stated, "These letters were definitely written by Orson Welles. All the characteristics in the handwriting match perfectly with his known correspondence." Even more striking was that the dates mentioned in the letters aligned perfectly with Welles' known life story. Letters written during Citizen Kane's filming process discussed the film's creation phases. Letters from 1942 describing his troubles with RKO Studios matched historical records. But the real shock was in the letters' content. Welles wasn't just confessing his love for Billie Holiday. He was also detailing how her artistry inspired his films. These letters shed light on the creation process of one of cinema history's most important films. According to information gleaned from the letters, Orson Welles and Billie Holiday first met in October 1941 in New York. Welles had watched Billie's performance at a party following Citizen Kane's premiere. At the time, Welles was 26 years old, and Billie was also 26. In Welles' first letter dated 1941, he described this meeting: "Billie, the night I first saw you, it was as if time had stopped. When you sang Strange Fruit, the entire room held its breath. That's when I realized this is what real art is. You weren't just singing, you were creating a social revolution." At this first meeting, Welles was mesmerized by Billie's courage. The bravery to perform a controversial song like Strange Fruit aligned perfectly with Welles' own artistic vision. Both were artists trying to break the conventional rules of their era. According to details in the letters, Welles and Billie had talked for hours that night. Welles shared his visions about cinema, while Billie discussed music's role in social change. This intellectual bond between the two artists would soon transform into emotional intimacy. At the party's end, Welles had proposed a future meeting to Billie, However, both were aware of how risky this relationship could be. In 1940s America, a romantic relationship between a white man and a black woman could end both of their careers. From late 1941 onwards, Wells and Billie began having secret meetings. The letters detailed how these meetings were organized. Wells would make up various excuses to meet with Billie, arranging supposedly business meetings. In a 1942 letter, Wells wrote, "Dearest Billie, our secret meeting in Central Park last night was the most beautiful moment of my life. Walking with you, it felt like the whole world belonged to us. But I'm also very scared. This love could destroy us both." The meetings usually took place at night in secluded locations. Wells would pick up Billie in his car and drive outside the city. Sometimes they met in bohemian cafes in Greenwich Village, sometimes in secret jazz clubs in Harlem. One of their most romantic meetings was a secret party organized for Billie's birthday in February 1942. Wells had arranged a special film screening for Billie. In a small cinema with just the two of them, they watched Citizen Kane together. That night, Wells told Billie the real story behind the film. He confessed that Kane's character's loneliness was inspired by the social isolation Billie experienced. This confession further strengthened the bond between the two artists. One of the most surprising discoveries in the letters was Billie Holiday's influence on the creation of Citizen Kane. Wells had drawn intense inspiration from Billie's character and life story while writing his film. In a detailed 1942 letter, Wells made this confession: "Billie, when creating the Kane character, I drew inspiration from your strength and loneliness. Kane's rebellion against the world is the same as your challenge to society with strange fruit. Both are powerful, both are alone, both are ahead of their time." This letter showed the creation process of one of cinema history's most important films in a completely new light. The idea that Kane's characteristic features were inspired by Billie Holiday's personality amazed film critics. Wells had also developed the film's musical concept by drawing inspiration from Billie. He wrote that the dramatic silences in Kane's loneliness scenes were inspired by the emotional voids in Billie's songs. The most striking detail was that Wells had initially planned to use the Strange Fruit song in the film's soundtrack. He wanted this song to play during Kane's downfall scenes. However, studio executives rejected this plan, saying the song was too controversial. This rejection deeply upset Wells. In his letters, he wrote, "Without your song, Kane remained incomplete. That song perfectly reflected the film's soul." This detail showed that Strange Fruit could have had an important place not just in music history, but in cinema history as well. Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit song had deeply affected Wells. In his letters, he described in great detail the impact this song had on him. Wells saw Strange Fruit not just as a song, but as a cinematic experience. In a 1943 letter, Wells wrote, "Dearest Billie, every time I listen to Strange Fruit, film scenes come alive before my eyes. This song is as powerful as a film script. I wish I could visualize it." Wells had actually planned to make a short film based on Strange Fruit. In his letters, he described the details of this project. The film would address the historical roots of racism and lynching cases in America. Billie Holiday would both act in the film and perform the song. This project was a very revolutionary idea in the 1940s. At that time, Hollywood avoided addressing the issue of racism. However, Wells was prepared to take this risk due to his belief in art's role in social change. Preliminary preparations had been made for the project. Wells had prepared a script outline and determined filming locations. He had even described in detail to Billie what images would be used in the film. However, RKO Studios executives found this project too risky. They thought the film would both be a commercial failure and harm the studio. Eventually, the project was canceled. This cancellation became an important breaking point in Wells and Billie's relationship. Both believed this project could be not just a film but a tool for social change. The project's cancellation greatly disappointed them both. From 1943 onwards, Wells and Billie's relationship began attracting FBI attention. Both were under surveillance by federal agents for different reasons. Billie was suspected of subversive activities due to her Strange Fruit song. Wells was monitored for his leftist statements and anti-fascist stance. In a 1944 letter, Wells expressed his concern about this surveillance. "Billie, now every move we make is being watched. I think our phone conversations are being tapped. This relationship has become very dangerous for both of us." FBI agents had begun documenting Wells and Billie's meetings. According to information in the letters, agents were photographing the two on various occasions. These photographs were archived as evidence that could be used against them in the future. The pressure was particularly intense on Billie. In his letters, Wells described how witnessing the difficulties Billie faced upset him. The FBI's constant harassment of Billie also affected her performances. The most critical moment occurred in the fall of 1944. FBI agents had noticed Wells and Billie's secret meeting and followed them both. This incident greatly frightened Wells. Now they had to conduct their relationship even more secretly.
During this period, the tone of the letters also began to change. Love expressions gave way to feelings of anxiety and fear. Both were beginning to understand that this relationship was not sustainable.
Wells and Billie's relationship was beginning to cause whispers in Hollywood circles. The entertainment industry of the 1940s was not in a position to accept such a relationship. Especially for Wells's career, this situation posed a great risk. In a 1945 letter, Wells shared with Billie the warnings he received from studio executives. "Dearest Billie, today Louis Mayer from RKO spoke with me. He mentioned rumors about our relationship. He said I should think about my career, but I can't imagine losing you." Powerful figures in Hollywood were pressuring Wells. He wasn't being given new projects, and obstacles were being created for the distribution of his existing films. This situation seriously threatened Wells's cinema career. Billie's situation was even more difficult. Lady Day, who was already under FBI surveillance, was now seeing more pressure due to her Hollywood connections. Concert reservations were being canceled, and new recording contracts weren't being offered. The most painful event was the cancellation of a film project that Wells valued greatly. The magnificent Amberson's film's editing had been interfered with, and Wells's vision had been corrupted. This situation had damaged his reputation in Hollywood. In his letters, Wells spoke about drawing strength from Billie while trying to cope with these difficulties. However, at the same time, he was beginning to acknowledge that this relationship was harming them both. In early 1946, Wells and Billie decided to end their relationship. This decision was very difficult for both of them, but they no longer had any other choice. The pressures had become unbearable, and both of their careers were in serious danger. One of Wells's final letters explained this separation decision. "Dearest Billie, my heart is breaking as I write this letter, but we can no longer continue this relationship. We've both lost so much, and we can't risk further losses. I will always love you, but the price of this love has been too heavy." Both struggled greatly during the separation process. Billie's performances during that period showed increased emotional intensity. Wells tried to throw himself into new projects, but in his letters he expressed how much he missed Billie. Their last meeting took place in Central Park in March 1946. Wells described this meeting in great detail. "When I held your hand for the last time, it felt like a part of my life was ending. But this separation was the right thing to do. We had both seen where this love was taking us." Letter exchanges continued for a few more months after the separation. However, these letters were no longer love letters, but messages expressing the respect two former lovers had for each other. Wells' final letter to Billie was dated 1947. This letter was like a summary of their relationship. "Dearest Billie, a year has passed since we parted, but I still think of you every day. The love I experienced with you changed me both as a person and as an artist. The inspiration I drew from you while creating Citizen Kane was the foundation of my career's most important success." In this final letter, Wells spoke about Billie's art's lasting impact on him. He wrote that the Strange Fruit song had inspired the social messages in his future films. In the letter's most emotional part, Wells said, "I wish we had lived in a different world. I wish our love hadn't been so dangerous, but I still don't regret it. Having loved you was the most beautiful experience of my life." After this final letter, correspondence between the two artists completely ceased. Both focused on their own careers and left this secret love in the past. However, the effects of this relationship continued to be seen in both of their art for many years. Social injustice themes became more prominent in Wells's subsequent films, while the pain of lost love was felt more deeply in Billie's songs. After the letters were found in 2020, various experts conducted comprehensive analyses to verify these documents' historical accuracy. Film historian Dr. Amanda Richardson from the University of Southern California examined the cinema industry details mentioned in the letters. According to Richardson, the events and dates mentioned in the letters showed perfect alignment with Hollywood history of that period. The studio meetings, project cancellations, and industry pressures that Wells mentioned matched real events found in records. Music historian Dr. Marcus Thompson examined the details about Billie Holiday mentioned in the letters. The information mentioned about Billie's concert schedule, FBI surveillance, and personal difficulties during that period aligned with existing documents. The most striking verification came from FBI archives. Documents released under the Freedom of Information Act showed that both Wells and Billie were followed by federal agents in the 1940s. Some reports even contain notes about the two being seen together. These verifications proved that the letters weren't just romantic fiction, but documented real events that had occurred. Now, cinema and music historians began conducting new research about the cultural history of the 1940s.
The discovery of the letters created a major impact in the academic world. Cinema professor Dr. James Wilson from Harvard University said this discovery would completely change Citizen Kane analyses. Now when we watch this film, we need to consider Billie Holiday's influence as well, Wilson said. Music historian Dr. Sarah Davis from Columbia University began researching the role of this relationship in Billie Holiday's artistic development. According to Davis, the love experienced with Welles had caused noticeable changes in Billie's performances during the 1940s. The most important academic project was the forbidden art research initiated at MIT. This project examined the effects of racial pressures experienced in the 1940s on artists. The Welles-Holiday relationship had become one of the main examples of this research. Additionally, an exhibition about this relationship began being prepared at Lincoln Center. The exhibition would present letters, photographs from that period, and works by both artists together. This academic interest showed that the letters weren't just a romantic story, but also important social history documents. The discovery of the letters also generated great interest among contemporary artists. Film director Spike Lee announced plans to bring this story to the big screen. According to Lee, this story wasn't just a love story, but also a story of America confronting its racial history. Jazz vocalist Diana Krall prepared an album reinterpreting Billie Holiday's songs from this period. Krall said, "After reading these letters, I understand Billie's songs from that period differently." Academy Award-winning producer Jordan Peele also announced plans to film this story as a documentary. According to Peele, this story was one of America's untold stories. This interest showed that the letters weren't just historical documents, but also sources of inspiration for contemporary art. In 2021, the letters began being permanently exhibited at the Smithsonian Museum. The exhibition was titled "Forbidden Love: Art Across Racial Lines," and featured artists who fought against racial barriers in America's cultural history. The exhibition's most popular section was where Welles' letters to Billie were presented alongside scenes from Citizen Kane. Visitors could see how the film's characters were inspired by Billie Holiday. The letters also began entering educational curricula. In many universities, these letters were used as primary sources in 1940s cultural history courses. The Library of Congress also added the letters to its digital archive. This way, researchers worldwide could access the letters. The secret love between Orson Welles and Billie Holiday proved to be not just a personal story, but also an important part of America's cultural history. This relationship showed the courage of two artists trying to overcome the social barriers of the 1940s. The letters also revealed love's impact on artistic creativity. The inspiration Welles drew from Billie while creating Citizen Kane allowed us to understand the creation process of one of cinema history's most important works from a new perspective. Billie Holiday's artistic development during this period also showed love's effect on music. The role of the intellectual and emotional bond she experienced with Welles and her determination to sing bold songs like Strange Fruit became clear. This secret love story also exemplified art's power in overcoming social barriers. The inspiration that artists from two different worlds drew from each other had pushed the boundaries of both cinema and music. Finally, these letters reminded us that history holds many stories yet to be discovered. Perhaps in other archives, documents about other secret loves and artistic collaborations were waiting. The forbidden love of Orson Welles and Billie Holiday continues to teach us important lessons about the power of love, art, and courage, even 80 years later.